Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to have a serious adult relationship with a literal wall of ice? Because that's what it was like being with my ex, Harper. I'm not exaggerating. Anytime there was an issue, anytime I needed to talk about something real, he'd just shut down. It was like a switch flipped behind his eyes, and the person I loved was suddenly gone, replaced by this cold, impenetrable stranger. It would start with the classic, tight-lipped "I'm fine," a phrase that in our house meant this conversation is over and you will be punished for starting it. Then came the silence. And I don't mean a quiet, peaceful silence. I mean a heavy, suffocating coldness that would seep into the furniture and chill the air for days. It was a weapon. He was punishing me for having feelings, for wanting to talk, for rocking his perfectly calm boat. And yeah, I'll admit it, I'd get loud. My voice would climb an octave, I'd get emotional. I'd probably push too hard. But what else was I supposed to do? When someone just refuses to engage, when they build a fortress around themselves and leave you outside in the storm, your only option is to start yelling, hoping a few bricks will fall, right? It's maddening. You feel invisible, like you're screaming into a void. I was just trying to fix things, to connect with him. He was the one who wanted to let every little problem fester in the dark. He was the one who chose to escape every single time. And somehow I always ended up being the bad guy. Our relationship operated in this twisted, predictable cycle. It would start with a small crack, for instance, our 3-year anniversary. He forgot, not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, maybe, but it hurt. I waited all day for him to say something, and when he finally came home from his job as a logistics analyst, all he talked about was a shipment that got delayed. I let it slide until dinner, then I brought it up, my voice probably a little too tight. Did you forget what day it is, Harper? He didn't get angry, he didn't get defensive. That would have been too easy, too human. Instead, a mask of calm slipped over his face. Oh, right, I'm sorry, Renee, it's been a hectic week. And that was it. No real apology, just a statement of fact. For the next 2 days, he was the perfect boyfriend on the surface. He'd make me coffee in the morning, asking, "How did you sleep, dear?" with the formal politeness of a hotel concierge. He'd text me in the middle of the day to ask if I needed anything from the store. He was present, but he was gone. It was a performance of care, designed to make me feel utterly alone. The air would get thick with unspoken resentment, and I would be the one to finally break. I'd scream, cry, accuse him of not caring, and he would just watch me, his expression unreadable until I exhausted myself. Then and only then would he say, "Are you done?" And I'd collapse into his arms, feeling like a hysterical child, grateful for the crumbs of affection. He made me feel like the source of all chaos. But there was one time early on when the mask slipped. We were watching a movie where a mother was guilt-tripping her son, dredging up every mistake he'd ever made since he was 5. I saw Harper flinch. Later that night, he was unusually quiet, and I asked him what was wrong. For the first and only time, he opened up. He told me about his childhood, about his mother. She never yelled, he said. She was worse. Her weapon was memory. Any disagreement, any time he tried to assert his own identity, she would calmly, methodically list every single one of his past failures. It was a form of emotional blackmail, a way to remind him that he was, and always would be, a disappointment. She'd bring up the time I broke a vase when I was 8 to prove I was irresponsible when I was 20, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She'd use a C I got on a math test in middle school as evidence that I'd fail in my career. It wasn't about the issue at hand, it was about shame. About trapping you in the worst version of yourself. He looked at me then, and his eyes were dark with a pain I had never seen before. "Renee," he said, and his voice was so serious it scared me. "I can handle almost anything, but I cannot handle that. It's the one thing that breaks me. Please promise me you will never ever do that to me. It's my only red line." I promised, of course. I held him and told him I would never be that person. I meant it too, at the time. The catalyst, the thing that finally burned it all down, was so stupidly small. It was a pair of concert tickets. Harper's favorite band, a reclusive indie group called Fretfall, had announced a surprise one-night-only show. Getting tickets was a bloodbath. I set 3 alarms, had 4 browser windows open, and my heart was pounding like a drum solo for the 10 minutes I sat in the digital queue. When the confirmation email landed in my inbox, I literally screamed with joy. It was perfect. It was my way of showing him, "See, I listen, I care. I can make you happy." I spent the rest of the day planning the reveal. I'd make his favorite meal, pasta carbonara, open that bottle of wine we were saving, and then after dinner, I'd present them to him. I imagined his face lighting up, the genuine, unforced smile that had become so rare. I imagined him grabbing me, spinning me around the kitchen. I was chasing that feeling, that brief moment of connection that made all the silent days feel worth it. He came home late, shoulders slumped, the weight of his workday etched onto his face. I should have seen it. The warning signs were all there. He barely registered the smell of the food, gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, and immediately started talking about some supply chain crisis in Singapore. I tried to steer the conversation to lighten the mood, but his mind was a million miles away. Finally, after we'd eaten in near silence, I couldn't wait any longer. I pulled the printed tickets from their hiding spot. "I have something for you," I said, my voice trembling a little with excitement. He took them, glanced at the paper, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Oh wow, fretful." He looked up at me, but his eyes were still distant, clouded with spreadsheets and logistics charts. "Thanks, Renee, that's really thoughtful." "That was it." Thoughtful, he folded the paper and placed it carefully on the table, as if it were a utility bill. The grand, joyful explosion I had pictured in my head fizzled into a pathetic puff of smoke. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't his silence this time, it was mine. A cold, heavy dread was spreading through my chest. All that effort, all that excitement, and all I got was thoughtful. "That's it?" I finally asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He looked up, genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" I said. "Thank you, it's great, really. I've had a hell of a day." And that was the match on the gasoline. My day didn't matter. My effort didn't matter. All that mattered was his hell of a day. The familiar narrative clicked into place in my brain. I give, he takes. I try, he dismisses. The argument started, as it always did, with me accusing him of being a cold, unfeeling robot. And he responded, as he always did, by retreating. The shutters came down, the drawbridge went up. And there it was, the wall, the silence I hated more than anything in the world. I stood there, watching the emotional life drain from his face, replaced by that infuriating, placid mask. The silence was a physical presence in the room, pressing in on me, mocking my outburst. And I just snapped. All the frustration, all the loneliness, all the nights spent feeling like I was the only one fighting for this relationship, it all boiled over into a white-hot rage. I needed to hurt him. I needed to make him feel something, anything other than this dismissive calm. If I couldn't get his love, I would settle for his anger. So I reached for the ugliest, most effective weapon I had. "This is just like you, Harper," I started, my voice dripping with contempt. "God forbid you show a single ounce of genuine emotion. Remember that time you messed up that big project at work? You came home looking like a kicked puppy but refused to talk about it for a week. You just moped around, making everything miserable for me." He didn't move, he just stared at a spot on the floor. I wasn't done. The first blow had landed, and now I was just throwing punches wildly. "Or what about my birthday last year? You forgot to make a reservation and we ended up at that crappy diner. You didn't even care. You just sat there stirring your coffee a million miles away just like you are right now." His jaw tightened just a little. A crack in the wall, I pushed harder. "It's always been like this, even from the beginning. Remember that trip to the lake house? You spent the whole time on your laptop because of some emergency, leaving me to deal with your passive-aggressive sister all by myself. You never have my back, you never show up for me." Each memory was a stone I was throwing at him, and I could see them landing, see the small, almost imperceptible winces. But he still wouldn't look at me. He was denying me the satisfaction of a reaction, and in that final, desperate moment, I decided to go for the kill. I wanted to tear down his fortress completely. I took a deep breath and spat the words out, the cruelest words I could possibly conjure. "You know what? You're just like your mother. Exactly like her. You think you're so different, but you're not. You use silence to manipulate everyone around you to punish them. It's the only way you know how to feel powerful, to look down on everyone else from your pathetic, lonely little throne." The silence that followed was absolute. He slowly lifted his head, and the look on his face, it wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness, it was worse, it was emptiness. The wall was gone, but there was nothing behind it. Just a desolate, vacant space. He spoke, and his voice was terrifyingly soft. "You finally said it." He stood up, his movements calm and deliberate. He walked past me, not even a flicker of recognition in his eyes, as if I were a piece of furniture. "We're done, Renee." He went into the bedroom. I heard a drawer open and close. A few minutes later, he walked out with his wallet and his car keys. He didn't look at me. He didn't say another word. He just opened the front door and walked out, closing it gently behind him. The click of the door latch echoed in the sudden, crushing silence of the apartment. For a moment, I just stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs, wrapped in a blanket of self-righteous anger. He'll be back, I told myself. He was just cooling off. This was his move, the dramatic exit to make me feel guilty. He'd circle the block, maybe go for a drive, and then he'd walk back in expecting an apology. That was our toxic pattern. I'd push, he'd pull away, I'd push harder, he'd leave, and then eventually he'd come back to the status quo. But an hour passed, then two. The anger began to curdle into a sour mix of anxiety and indignation. How dare he? How dare he make me wait like this? He was the one who started it with his coldness, his refusal to connect. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over his contact photo, ready to unleash a barrage of furious, justifying texts. But his name wasn't in my recent conversations. I scrolled. Nothing. I typed Harper into the search bar. The contact was gone. My blood ran cold. My fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled to open Instagram. His profile, a familiar grid of our hikes, silly selfies, and shared moments, was gone, just a stark white screen with the words, "User not found." A wave of nausea hit me. Facebook the same. It wasn't just a fight anymore. He had digitally erased me. In the space of 2 hours, he had surgically removed every trace of our life together from his corner of the world. Panic, sharp and icy, clawed its way up my throat. This was different. This wasn't the pattern. This was a demolition. I frantically dialed his number. It rang once, then went to voicemail. I tried again, straight to voicemail. He had blocked my number too. My hands were shaking as I called Olivia, our mutual friend. The words tumbled out of me in a chaotic, self-serving torrent. The tickets I'd worked so hard to get, his infuriating indifference, the argument, his dramatic, silent exit. I painted a picture of myself as the passionate, long-suffering victim and Harper as the emotionally stunted villain who had massively overreacted. "Can you believe him, Liv?" I finished, my voice thick with performative tears. He just walked out and he blocked me over one stupid fight where I was just being honest. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the lines. It stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. I expected a chorus of "what a jerk" and "you deserve better." Instead, what I got was Olivia's voice, quiet and heavy, stripped of its usual warmth. "Renee," she said, and the way she said my name made my stomach clench. "This wasn't about the tickets, you know it wasn't." He was being a cold bastard, I insisted, my voice rising defensively. "Well, he didn't even care." "No," she said, her tone firm, cutting through my hysteria like a razor. "Stop it, just stop. We've talked about this before, about your tendency to go nuclear. You told me what he said about his mom. He told you his history. He laid his biggest, most painful wound on the table and he trusted you with it. He gave you a map to the one place that would completely destroy him, and he begged you not to go there." I was silent, the excuses dying on my lips. "You didn't just cross a line, Renee," she continued, her voice filled with a disappointment that hurt more than any anger could have. "You took that map and you marched right in and planted a bomb. You used the one thing he ever asked you not to. You used his mother's weapon against him because you knew it was the one thing that would truly hurt. So don't you dare act surprised that he's gone." Olivia's words hung in the air long after we hung up, but I refused to let them sink in. She was taking his side. She didn't understand the years of frustration, of feeling like I was screaming at a brick wall. He'd come back, he had to, our whole lives were intertwined. His favorite mug was still in the cupboard, his toothbrush in the holder. His entire collection of ridiculously pretentious vinyl records was still sitting by the stereo. He couldn't just leave all that. For the next few days, I lived in a state of suspended animation, a delusional bubble of hope. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my head would snap up. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart would leap, only to crash when I saw it was just a promotional email. I cleaned the apartment obsessively, as if preparing for a royal visit. I bought his favorite coffee beans. I was setting the stage for his apology, for the moment he would walk back in and admit he had overreacted. By the fifth day, the bubble was starting to lose its air. A grim reality was setting in. I found myself wandering through the apartment, touching his things. I picked up the heavy wool coat he'd left slung over a chair. It still smelled faintly of him, a mix of cedar and rain. That's when I noticed his briefcase on the floor by the sofa, left behind in his hasty departure. He'd need this for work. This was my inn, my olive branch. My hands trembled slightly as I unclasped the worn leather latches. I was just going to get his work ID so I could drop it off at his office, a grand, magnanimous gesture. But as I opened it, a single piece of paper, folded neatly, slipped out from an inner pocket and fluttered to the floor. It wasn't a work document, it was a booking confirmation. I picked it up, my eyes scanned the details, my brain struggling to process the information. It was for a 2-night stay at the Cove, a ridiculously expensive seaside inn we'd dreamed of visiting, for the weekend right after the Fretfall concert. My breath caught in my throat. There at the bottom of the page was a small field labeled "Special Requests." And in that field, a short, simple sentence was typed out. Celebrating my girlfriend Renee's promotion, please arrange for champagne in the room upon arrival. A surprise. I sank to the floor, the paper crinkling in my clenched fist. The air rushed out of my lungs, leaving a hollow, aching void. His silence, his distraction, his hell of a day, it wasn't about him dismissing me. He had been planning this. While I was stewing in my own perceived victimhood, convinced of his indifference, he was quietly arranging this beautiful, thoughtful surprise in his own quiet, thoughtful way. He was showing up for me, and I, in my blind rage, had not only missed it, I had punished him for it. The foundation of my anger, the entire narrative of his coldness and my justified fury, crumbled into dust, leaving me alone in the wreckage. I was the villain, it was me, it had always been me. The final scene of my story is pathetic. It's a week later. I'm sitting in a noisy coffee shop with another friend, Jessica. She's trying to be supportive, patting my hand while I put on a brave face. Honestly, I'm relieved, I say, forcing a laugh that sounds like breaking glass. I'm so done with his moods. Who needs that kind of drama? Good riddance, you know. She nods, offering a weak, sympathetic smile. But when she gets up to use the restroom, the facade shatters. I pull out my phone, my thumb instinctively navigating to my photo gallery. I open the picture I took of the booking confirmation, the digital proof of my monstrous mistake. I just stare at the words, a surprise, and a single hot tear escapes, rolling down my cheek and splashing onto the screen, blurring the evidence of a future I had single-handedly destroyed.